Welcome to the 20th episode of Timely Topics. I'm your host, Rory and I'm excited to be joined by my compelling co-host, Jen Matthew.
Hey.
Our theme for this episode is selling. While people may see being a salesperson as a negative thing, there are numerous positive connotations and impacts of selling. Whether it's your business or personal life, Jen and I sit down to discuss how you are constantly selling something. We also will be catching up on what we did this summer and rounding things off as always with our good idea or bad idea segment. You ready, Jen?
Let's do this.
Welcome to the Timely Topics Show, where we're bringing you all the buzz and banter of today's business conversations. Straight from our studios in downtown Hartford, with your hosts, Rory McGloin and Jennifer Matthew.
Jen, welcome back. Summer is unfortunately over, as they say. We're back in the studio. It's good to be back with everybody, though.
It is awesome.
Yeah,
I love the vibe in here on Fridays.
I was excited to be back. So everybody wants to know, right? This is what they've been thinking about. How was your summer?
It was amazing,
Nice.
as summer always is. But I think one of the things I struggle with is I make this incredibly long list of all the stuff that I want to accomplish over the course of the summer. We talked about this in the last episode, traveling around Connecticut, all the things I want to do, idealistically, all the stuff that I want to accomplish. And I got through a good amount of the list, but there's definitely still a few things lingering.
You know, what was nice is almost like your reintroduction back to Instagram. I saw you putting up some posts of some places, some food. I was happy to see it. You always have nice curated content. So it was good to see you back and contributing to the community in that way.
Yeah. And I know that you typically love summer and get a lot of stuff done, a lot of relaxing, but this summer you kind of hit a little bit of a roadblock.
Well, I have to say, summer got off to a great start, as summer always does, playing lots of ball and had lots of fun. Megan and Ray, we had lots of activities, so it was good. And the weather was really nice this summer, so we got outside a heck of a lot. Unfortunately, in my last Gaelic football game of the season, I did tear my biceps tendon, so that wasn't ideal. And it came right amongst the 2 weeks of summer that I actually had nothing relatively going on. So that was relatively bittersweet, but we're in recovery mode. We're starting to move the arm. And a big shout out, by the way, to the entire UConn Health Network for a second, right? Dr. Corey Edgar, thank you. They got me in real fast and sewed me up. And I think I'm going to be as good as new in a couple months.
Yeah, I learned a little bit more about how tendons hold muscles on. You gave me a nice tutorial and offered to it was so nice of you to offer to send me that YouTube video of the surgery. I chose not to watch it. I can't handle anything associated with that.
I have to say though, like seriously, getting taken care of, right, in that first instant response when something happens to you and you're kind of devastated, and it's pretty easy to put your head down. When you've got people around you that are kind of lifting you up and you feel like you're gonna get taken care of. When I went into Farmington on the day of surgery, I felt like a rock star. I had some people in my corner. Some people had given me some help along the way to get things moving. And when I showed up and they said, "Hey, Rory, like we know why you're here. We know what's going on." I woke up. I felt really good. I've been relatively quite positive about the experience. So a huge shout out to everybody that was involved in that and trying to get me back on the mend as quickly as possible. It wasn't all bad though. Some good things really happened in the realm of sport, which our listeners know. I'm big into my Gaelic games and my Gaelic football in particular. In the third year of our new ladies Gaelic football team, we won the Northeast Championship, and that was a really big deal. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And I'm super pumped for the players. A lot of the women that play with us, they've only started playing in the last couple seasons, and to win in the Northeast is a really big deal. So a huge shout out to everybody in the club and on the team for that. It was a great accomplishment, and we really enjoyed celebrating that for a couple weeks, and we will continue to do so throughout the fall. Also had a chance to go see Oasis last weekend. And so by the time this comes out, that'll be a couple weekends from now. They were down in East Rutherford, went to both nights. Huge spectacle, 80,000 people both nights, singing along, singing the song. So if you were somebody who grew up in the 90s and you might have listened to Oasis, maybe you had a chance to go. If you did go, by the way, give me a shout out. Let me know how you thought the show was. It was fun. And the one thing that stood out to me was everybody was there for the music. So the atmosphere was really cool. It was quite focused on going to see the band who we probably thought was never going to get back together again. So that was probably like my biggest highlight in terms of things that I did. And it was just really fun to be a part of and to be part of that environment because the show was so big. Did you have a moment this summer, Jen, where you look back and you're like, that was kind of like the pinnacle moment of thing that I did?
Yeah. So I'm really into cooking, as you talked about before. I love farmers markets, trying new food, the fresh local experience is awesome. So what I did this summer was I signed up for Doro. So Doro Restaurant Group put out a series of different events for the summer, both farm to table dinners that you could just go if you didn't want to do the work. Sure. And then there's the farm to table cooking class. It was a 6-hour excursion out at Sub-Edge Farm. Shout out to both Doro and Sub-Edge for putting that on. It was amazing. We actually got to go out in the field and cultivate the vegetables. We got to learn just about the experience of the farm and the history of the land, which tied into Connecticut and agriculture, and it was just so cool. And then we got to take the vegetables that we cultivated and brought them over to this big outdoor kitchen and got to cook alongside the chefs at Doro and made this amazing farm to table spread and sat for a few hours and just ate and drank and had a great evening. And I went by myself, so I met a lot of different people and actually ended up sitting with a whole table of people from West Hartford and made some really great friends. So it was such a cool experience.
That's so fun because, like, for me, I think the only way that I'm going to continue to try to fall in love with cooking would be through those experiences. Otherwise, it just feels like a means to an end. And so whenever I get around it, I often am inspired. Did you leave inspired in some particular fashion? In
so many ways. And I could just go on this crazy list of reflections that I've had since that moment. But just the local cooking and experiencing local food, you just can't. You can't do that all year round. So I want to savor as much of that moment as I can through the fall and enjoy that.
Speaking of local, we were off this summer. We didn't have any episodes, and our tremendous team of interns, our production assistants, both Lucas and Abby, were out and they were doing things. Quick highlight, Abby, who is a Build Hartford Fellow, was out experiencing all of the things in Hartford. She was a part of the Hartford Taste Festival. She was at the Butler McCook House, went to multiple farmers market in Hartford, just had a really great summer, not just participating, but as a fellow, as an ambassador for the city, sharing that content. So we will tag Abby's Instagram and give her a follow, and she's going to continue that work into the fall. And so lots of great things happening in Hartford, and the program continues to showcase what the city has to offer. And I know that, Jen, you played a hand in helping Lucas find his summer internship.
Yeah, and I think the fun thing about this program in general is that we allow students to come in here and work and learn how to facilitate a podcast. I don't know that our listeners truly understand that piece of it, but it's such a cool experience. And then we do kick them out into the real world for the summer.
I think they run away from us, if we're being honest.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think they missed us. But we send them out into the real world, and a huge shout out to Jeremy and SedMed, who offered Lucas an internship this summer. And, he needed some professional selling experiences for his degree at UConn, and went and spent the summer with Jeremy, and we'll be working with him through the fall semester as well. So
right on brand, right? Topic selling. Yeah. And we got him an internship selling. Fantastic. It was a really good summer. Overall, I think the weather in New England, if you're in the New England area, was great. Some of my friends that spent some time in Europe actually had some great weather too. So I know some folks that went over to Europe and had a couple of weeks of great weather too. So we hope no matter what you did, you had a great summer and you're happy to be back. We're happy to have you back listening. If you did something fun, let us know. As always, we'll dive right into our correspondence segment. And we got a lot of great correspondence. So Jen, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, so in our last interview, you had Rachel Linda on and talked all about Connecticut. Such a great episode. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you go and do that. But Rachel sent us a really great note on LinkedIn. She said, Jen and Rory, you are so dynamic. Thanks for this opportunity. I look forward to all your endeavors.
Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you.
Also on that episode, Jonathan M. chimed in, and the comment was, Carpe diem, baby. Side note, Rachel is so amazing that she literally is worth traveling to Connecticut to meet. Hi from the Blue Economy and Seaweed World, RL. Thanks so much for checking in, Jonathan.
Yeah, and we got a great note from Riley G saying, I love Jen's discussion on hiking and how nature is more beautiful than man-made things. It inspired me to take a couple of hikes this summer.
Did you go on any hikes this summer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that like a thing that you do regularly? You go hiking?
Not as much as I'd like to, but I would love to go more. There's just so many great hiking trails. What's the best
local hike for those of us in like the greater Hartford area?
I love doing Simsbury and doing Talcott Mountain.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. We had an episode on networking. I actually quite enjoyed that one myself. Thomas P. checked in and said, love the episode. Mentorship is such an important aspect of networking. And I think that people can take the connections you gain through mentorship for granted. Always make sure you are strengthening your professional relationships. I totally agree with that perspective, Thomas. I think not taking them for granted. So maybe take this moment, if you're listening right now, who's somebody that you should reach out, send them a thank you, say thanks for your mentorship, and we'll have done our good deed for the day.
Yeah. And then on that same episode, Ava said Rory's note on how he goes into a room with intention to share insights and helpful tips instead of just handing out business cards is really interesting. I appreciate that point of view on networking and how it should all start with a shared interest or engaging conversation rather than a handshake and a quick exchange. And I really loved that point because I think that's what people are most afraid of, is this very inauthentic transactional thing that we do when we go out and network versus it being really truly like this mutually beneficial exchange of ideas or of opportunity. And I just like the way that you posed that conversation. And
and it's actually going to serve as a great transition to our timely topics here in a little bit, where we're going to talk about this idea of attunement and how can you attune yourself to your audience's needs. And when you think about people going to a networking event, like everybody might be a little bit anxious saying, is anybody going to care? Does anybody want to talk to me? Does anybody think my thing's important? So you show up and attune to them, right? You're going to make a lot of friends that way. Do you have something that you want to share with us? Please check in. We love getting correspondence from our listeners. Send us an email, collaboratory@uconn.edu, or of course, you can find us on LinkedIn at the Connecticut Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and our channel on YouTube is at @UConn.CCEI.
Guess what just happened?
No way, you're kidding me.
Hey, did you hear about...
Are you sure about that? I can't believe they... Really?
It's time for Timely Topics.
In this episode's Timely Topics, we're talking about selling. Selling isn't just about products. It's about influence, persuasion, and creating value. From our businesses to our personal relationships, selling is a skill that has value everywhere we go. And while selling has various applications across different industries, there is no one right way. Therefore, Jen and I will discuss the fundamental process of selling and the positive and negative connotations of being seen as someone who sells. Beyond this, we dive deeper into the contemporary viewpoint of sales and how it seems to be a skill that is required just as much outside of business as it does in business. So, is selling just for the select, chosen few who have what it takes, or is selling truly a skill that everyone should master? Let's dive in.
All right, Rory. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about sales. It's a topic that I know you and I love to talk about. And last episode, we dove into networking. We talked about the personal and the professional side of going out and essentially selling yourself, right? Building connections. But I think one of the key takeaways that we have been talking about is going out and finding those connections where there's a mutual exchange of value. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about how that connects to sales. But sales,
yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that's a little bit different, right? When you talk about networking, I think it kind of provides like a bit of a positive connotation, maybe a little bit of excitement, meeting new people,
for
especially
extroverts.
Yeah. But I think it almost presents opportunity and it feels as if it's not as competitive.
Yeah.
For me, when I think about sales, I harken back. So in college, I had a chance to work at a ski shop, right? I remember I was 2 weeks up at Stonehill and there was a ski shop around the corner and I knew I wanted to get a job. I wanted to make some money. I said, I'm going to work at a ski shop, right? And I'd only snowboarded at that point. And I walked in and I met Leslie. I said, will you hire me? I thought I was just going to work retail. I'd worked at Sears for a couple of weeks, so I thought I was going to work retail. What I didn't realize was that they had a great sales atmosphere. So the Sweeneys on Saturdays and Sundays would put a $100 bill on the office table. And they said, whoever sells the most gear at the end of the day goes home with $100. That was all I needed, right? That competitiveness was so exciting to me. There was now a thrill. There was a chase. We were playing a game. And everybody that walked through the door to me became an opportunity for me to take that $100 home. Now, I had to learn, how do you balance the competitive thrill of trying to earn that commission with still serving the people that came through the door like they were family, because that's how we talked about them. We wanted them to get up on the mountain safe. We wanted them in the best gear. We wanted them to have fun. And we wanted them to come back to our shop the next week and say, I just had the best time up in Vermont this weekend. Thanks for creating that gear. Yep. So all of that to be said, as we're diving into preparing for this episode, I think about sales sometimes with such excitement, with such reverence of being like, this is going to be fun. But it's not always that case. Where are you at, Jen, when you think about your experience with sales? Positive, negative, fun?
Yeah. So I was actually thinking about this, that the thread of sales, it's within every job I've ever had. There's been some sort of component, and I think we'll probably hit the point at some point in this conversation of it's in everything we do, right? Yeah. But really from a core job responsibility, being able to sell an idea or sell a concept. The thing that I actually really like the most is listening to the people that I'm selling to. So whoever's on the receiving end of whatever I'm creating or trying to bring to them, hearing what it is they need, and then knowing that I have something that can solve those problems for them or give them an opportunity to alleviate the pain or get access to something they couldn't before. That's what inspires me. So I love sales, and I love talking about it from this opportunity perspective. And we spend a lot of time training entrepreneurs talking about sales because that's ultimately what they need to do. And we'll dive into that hopefully during this conversation. But there certainly is a lot of negativity, as you said, around the concept. And I think some people cringe a little bit, and there's a lot of reasons why. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out, right, is that when you think about sales, especially when you may be aware that the salesperson is working on a commission, you begin to become defensive, right? They're trying to sell me something so that they can gain from it. And that poses a threat, right, to us as the buyer, because we start to wonder, is this operating from a place of goodwill? Does this person really want me to have this product because they think it's a good, choice for me, or they just want to make a sale on it? And I think one of the things that's interesting that we've seen significantly evolve in our lifetime is moving from a world of sales where the vast majority of goods were tangible. So Daniel Pink's book, he talks about, going and following around a vacuum cleaner salesman and an office product supply salesman. I talk about my experience in sales being selling skis and snowboards and helmets and jackets and hats. And one of the things that wasn't really under my control as a salesperson was who came through the door. All I knew is I had tangible goods. I need to put them in a bag. I need to send you home with them. We've now moved into a place where sales is a lot more abstract. It's a lot more fuzzy. You talked about selling ideas. We talked about selling ourselves. We talked about selling innovations. And I just wonder if that has moved the needle at all in terms of our connotation around sales, where how many folks do we now know that we have in our personal lives that are in sales, but they're selling software, right? Or they're selling SaaS type solutions where there may not actually be, you don't get a box. Right. And I don't know, do you think that maybe makes it easier for us to think about sales and not seeing it as being something that's so defensive? Or do we actually think in some regards, it's a lot harder to sell this abstract idea than it would be for me to sell you this thing that you can take home today and put in the back of your car?
Yeah. So as you're saying that, when I had just said my favorite part of sales is giving somebody something they need or listening to what they need and being able to be the one that offers that solution, I wonder if what makes me feel so negative or what makes others feel so negative about it is that in spite of that connection to the other person, they're still pushing. They're still trying to sell because they're trying to meet their own goals. They're not actually listening. And I think probably most of us have had an experience with somebody that has tried to sell us something that we were like, you're not listening to me. You're still trying to push this thing. And we always think about like the used car salesman, right? As like that.
Exactly what
or you talked about the vacuum cleaner guy that comes around. You're like, no, I don't want to spend $2,000 on this vacuum cleaner. I don't care that it also like fries my eggs and does this and does that. Like that you're not actually listening to my needs, and it's not solving the problem that I have, or the price point's not accurate to my needs. But I don't know if there's an abstract level of selling intangibles. I think we've gotten to the point now where I think we're much more aware of what it is we're seeking or what it is we need, and we are much better at going out and understanding where the avenues in which we can obtain the product, the service, the thing that we need. So we're more in control of it as a consumer.
Yeah. Exactly. 100% was just thinking that the difference is when you're purchasing tangible goods today is like you now have the opportunity to have more information than the salesperson.
100%.
I think if you've purchased a vehicle lately, you're going to do a tremendous amount of research on that vehicle. If you're going to purchase a home, I felt like by the time I finished buying my home, I knew more about the home than the listing agent, right? They were in for the commission. This was about to be the place where I was going to build my future. So I was much more invested in it. So I actually want to just take this from the perspective of the salesperson for a second. I think it's getting harder, right? If you're going to work in those spaces where you're selling tangible goods, the consumer is at a tremendous advantage because they have just as much, if not more information sometimes than you do. You're now just a broker, right? You're somebody there to help to facilitate. And you do have to wonder, as we continue with advancements in AI and we see bots now who are being part of brokerages, will there still be tangible salespeople in the future? Do we really need, right, the man or woman on the lot to come and approach us with a bag of popcorn and a bunch of balloons to buy a car? Like, maybe not. We've already seen a shift in that. It feels as if the vast majority of sales are now moving towards places where it is innovations and ideas and things that are abstract. And for me, that places a huge emphasis on that skill development that now everybody really is going to be a salesperson.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So we're seeing that with like Carvana and Redfin and some of these, where you would actually physically, you mentioned, go to a car lot or go work with a real estate agent. Like you can make these purchases online yourself because as a consumer, again, it's no longer a one-sided thing where I come in with something I need with no background or understanding of the product. I go to someone that I think maybe is an expert or is offering me the service, and they then tell me everything that they want me to know about it, and I have to take that at face value and then decide if I'm going to make that transaction. But when you mentioned Daniel Pink, which we talk about a lot because I think there's a great thought leadership tied into the various books, the book you're talking about is To Sell is Human, and one of the things he says in the book that I think is really interesting is tying in sales as not being a one-sided salesperson has the info, the consumer doesn't. And it's now a dual-sided relationship where you're right, the consumer comes in with almost more information now. And the salesperson's job is to be that transactional person to push it across the finish line.
There's a famous scene from the movie and the play Glengarry Glen Ross, and Alec Baldwin comes in and he's the sales guru at the beginning of the scene. So for most of our listeners, maybe they're under the age of like 35 right now, they have no idea what I'm talking about, but they've just reinvented the play. But there's this scene where Baldwin comes in and he flips over the chart and he talks about the ABCs of selling, right? A, always B, B, C closing. And that was the famous scene. And I think it pointed to that old world of selling where like you were really trying to close for your commissions because you had to get your buyer to sign on the line that is dotted. That's the line from the movie. In Daniel Pink's book, he reintroduces the ABCs. And the thing that I want to start with, just by introducing this to our listeners, is the A being attunement. And so, as you say, no longer is the salesperson the only person that has access to all the information in today's world. They simply may have an idea or an innovation or an opportunity, and they have to actually attune to the audience, to the buyer, if you will, and figure out, what do you want? What do you need? When we look at some of the literature on persuasion and how do you get people to do things, for the last 40 years, there's been great consensus around you genuinely need to understand what is your audience's ability to process the information, and then what level of involvement do they have. If they have low ability and low involvement, you can still get them to do what you want them to do, but it's going to be a completely different approach than the individual who has high level of ability and high level of involvement. And it's talked about as these like dual processing theories. The elaboration likelihood model is one of them, where essentially we're saying humans are processing information, and if we want to persuade them, we need to figure out how they're going to process the information and then adjust our approach accordingly.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I mean, you spent so many of your years both teaching, researching, and an expert in communication. And a piece of that is persuasion, storytelling. A lot of the work that you're doing, it's really basically another word for sales. It is the definition of what selling truly is persuading other people to take action on something that it is that you either want them to or that they want to be a part of. So tell me more about, like, I think the persuasion piece of it is just so fascinating.
Yeah. And if we were to go down the path for a moment, we might say like, okay, I'm a listener right now and I know that I need to improve my sales skills. Like, where do I start? Or what are some of the basic foundations? Really, one of the things that shifted and the point we're trying to make here is that if you are selling an idea or you're selling a product, it doesn't matter. The first thing that you have to figure out is, what does this audience, what does this buyer really have the ability to do? Do they have purchasing power? Yeah. Do they actually have the ability to make this decision, right? That's such an important part of the sales process. And so when we look at the ABCs that Daniel Pink presents, the A for attunement is really about attune yourself to where the audience is. That means that great salespeople have the ability to do two things really well. One, take perspective, and that's slightly different than empathy. Empathy is an emotional reaction, right? That's like putting myself in your shoes and thinking about how you feel. Yeah. Perspective taking is a cognitive side of things, right? So now we're actually going, what is this person's purchasing power, right? Do they have the leverage? Do they have the autonomy to make this decision? And figuring out the answers to those questions is going to allow you to take the right approach. I want to introduce the second part of it, and this is where I think things have dramatically shifted in how we think about sales, and that is that when you know that somebody has a high level of involvement in a message, you're going to buy a home, right? You're going to buy a car, you're making a big purchase decision, you're going out on a date, like some things that are relatively quite important to you potentially, right? We talk about in the literature the importance of taking a central approach, right? One that is focused on facts and statistics, one that is built in logic and rationale and reasoning. And I think one of the things I would want listeners to be aware of is simply ask yourself a question. If the audience that you're working with has a high degree of involvement in the decision that they're about to make, you need to show up with facts. You need to show up with logic and rationale, using emotionally based appeals to try to persuade somebody who has a high level of involvement in the decision. It's not going to be effective. So those are some simple things that I think you can do to set yourself on the right course. But let's go one step further, Jen. Let's talk about the other side of sales, which is hard. People are going to say no. In fact, I think whether it's the world of sports or it's the world of sales, you're going to lose more often than you're going to win, especially early days. What are your thoughts on, or the advice that we might offer to folks? How do you overcome those no's? How do you overcome the rejections, the defeats, to be able to have the ability to keep going and to stay inspired, to keep pushing your ideas forward?
I think it's to understand why it was a no. So is it in the delivery of the message? Is it the product or service? Is it the timing, willingness to pay, not the right person? I think you really need to understand that person's mindset, because I think the whole process we go on is a journey of learning. And if we can't gain any insights into each interaction, we're never going to improve either our process or who it is we're seeking support from.
And I think the other thing that we'd love to add to this is this concept of buoyancy, where it's being resilient, right? Having the ability to overcome the ups and downs. I think one of the things that helps many salespeople is like having a positive mindset. It's really interesting though, when you think about salespeople, we always say, oh, they have to be really good at rejection. It's kind of funny. I also wonder, do you actually need to be really bad at rejection? Because is that where the competitive spirit ultimately comes from, right? So if you're really good at having people say no to you all the time, you may not end up making a lot of sales if you're actually quite comfortable with it. So it is this interesting juxtaposition in terms of figuring that out. Last thing that I think we could kind of hit up for our listeners would be the concept of pitching. Now, in the world of entrepreneurship, we talk about pitching all the time, but I think that pitching oftentimes comes with this connotation of like there's a stage and there's lights and there's awards and giant checks. I'd like to see us push a little bit past that connotation of pitching and help everybody start to think about they're pitching all the time. What are your key tips? If you had like one tip that you would give somebody to be an effective pitcher, what do you think that would be?
Which we've talked about this entire time, know your audience, right? Yeah. Direct your messaging towards the people that you're speaking to. And we have difficulty when we're presenting startups with an opportunity to pitch in front of a large audience, because you have the varied degrees of knowledge, insight, ability to understand what it is, the message that they're trying to deliver. When you're speaking to an investor, you know what it is they want. They want to know what the return on their investment is going to be and how long it's going to take you to get to that point. So it's very easy to create it should be relatively easy to create a compelling pitch to an investor. But when you have a community of people that you have no idea if they even understand the problem, do they know the technology enough to understand that that's a viable solution? Do they understand market? Do they understand the financials? And so being so broad to tell the story, I know you try to balance that. Like, how do you both tell a captivating story, getting people interested in what you're doing, and then also being able to ask the follow-up questions, get people to want to come up to you after and connect with you? Yeah.
The last piece of advice that comes to mind for me, I think a little bit about, we used to be in a world of solving problems. I think today some of the best innovators and some of the best salespeople are going to be really good at finding problems. Yeah. So how can you position your solution as a problem to an audience and being able to make it so compelling that they're actually willing to believe, hey, this problem needs to be solved, in which you insert your solution. So we could talk all day about this topic. It's really exciting. We would love to hear your thoughts on sales. Do you have tips? Do you have advice? Did you have a great mentor give you a piece of advice along the way? A book, a podcast, something we should read and check out? We know we love to read. Send in your thoughts and comments and ideas, and we'd love to feature them on the next episode.
Good idea?
Bad idea.
All right, Jen, it's time for our good idea or bad idea segment. I'm up this episode with the good idea or bad idea question. So let me kick things off. We have seen both in the news as well as in our own personal lives a significant focus on government funding at the federal, state, and even local levels, investing in new innovations. And this includes new centers, these new physical spaces, these new programs where theoretically people can come together to innovate and bring new things, new ideas, new businesses to the economy. I've had some really interesting conversations with business owners over the summer, many of these longstanding business owners who have had success for 20, 30, 40 years. And they raised an interesting question because I was talking about some of these programs. They said, why doesn't the government consider investing in existing successful businesses and organizations that have demonstrated that they have the structure and the leadership to overcome marketplace adversity and allow them to innovate? And I thought, wow, that's a really good question for a good idea, bad idea segment. So Jen, let me put it to you like this. Is it a good idea or bad idea for government money to be directly invested in new innovation centers, or would it be better to be more strategic and invest that money into existing business infrastructures that have proven success in the past?
It's a good question. I am obviously wearing my CCEI hat, running a center that we receive money from federal and state organizations. Yep. I struggle a little bit because we've been around for almost 20 years and we've done a lot of support to the local economy, to UConn. I think that existing program centers need constant infusion of money because we are innovating internally. So it's not that we need to spin something out to go actually create things. It's we need new money, new opportunities to create and to meet the demand of what's happening. AI used an example when we've been talking about how do we support entrepreneurs utilizing AI, both building AI technologies, but also how to better equip them so they can be more efficient, they can make more money, they can do additional things. And without additional funding, we can't necessarily do those things internally. So I think there's a balance. I never actually answer the questions right when you ask me, but I think we like the idea of when you put a new thing out there, that's when the whole news stories come out and this big splash happens, is like this new center is being created to do this. And there's so much hype around it. And I wonder if it's being directed that way because if you were to give an existing center funding to start a new initiative, it's maybe not as fun or as like sparkly of a announcement. But I think just to go to the business piece of it, because I do struggle with this piece a little bit too, is early stage funding for new businesses. And if we talk about like Main Street businesses, there's a lot of support that our existing businesses need infrastructure wise to be able to build, to grow, to develop. They may not have the capital. They may not even be in a position where they could seek an investor. We talk to our right. restaurant friends a lot. A lot of investors will not invest in restaurants, right? So if they need something to be able to expand, to meet market demand, to help be a better partner in the neighborhood, to get more customers to come down the street, that helps all of the businesses on the street. Should we be supporting those businesses so they can grow and develop and keep that area vibrant versus continuing to build new things that we don't know if it's going to live 2, 3, 4 years from now?
Yeah, totally. Great answer, in my opinion. I think, it's delicate because if you don't invest in new, how do you grow? But where do you make the investment is at the heart of this question. My two cents on it is, I think that if we were able to objectively identify systemic gaps that might exist in a community where opportunity is not accessible and new is needed to provide that, I really quite like that as a support system, because sometimes you do need new to be able to create new networks, to create new systems. On the other hand, I'd also say that I think there are times where existing infrastructures can capitalize on networks a heck of a lot quicker. They're probably going to be able to iterate the investment quicker in a way to figure out what's working, what's not. And as you say, we don't know sometimes if these new centers are always going to pan out in the way that we thought that they would. And almost always we tend to invite folks with the exact same previous experience at the place that they were already doing it to come and do it in this new space. And maybe that is also something that needs to be looked at, right? So if we're going to go new, let's go new across the board, right? And that includes maybe the people and the individuals behind it.
And I like the idea of like joint collaboration. So taking existing centers or innovation hubs, pulling them together to roll out programs with people on their teams that already have the experience. Or the thing that I really like is we have our ears to the ground, our mindset to potentially what is available or what the needs are and filling in those gaps. And so we understand based on the experience what needs to come into play versus someone new might come in and might recreate what we already have and not actually fill the gap. So it's just being duplicative versus new and additive.
Yeah, it's a great debate. And I think whether it's local or at the federal level, I think it's an important question. And we'll continue to bring you great questions here in the Good Idea, Bad Idea segment. That is our show. Thanks so much for listening and tuning in. Please be sure to share with your friends or drop us an idea for a future episode, topic, or guest.
And don't forget, we're producing our show right here in the Collaboratory studios at CCEI in the heart of downtown Hartford.
Sure are. And until next time, we wish you good luck in all of your endeavors.